for Moses to retire, God said, go up on the mountain and die.
Yeah. And they.
So I think I'll work a little bit longer, God. I got another year in
I've
here.
been up to Mount Nebo, they were up on Mount Nebo the guides will tell you, said, Moses is buried out there somewhere, and I told him, oh, he ain't. I said, if you look over in the book of Jude, the devil came to get Moses' body, and Gabriel came to oppose him, and they fought over Moses' body. So God took care of that, and that's a good thing about fighting the devil or opposing the devil and anything like that. The reason Jude is mentioning that story about Moses' body, said that, listen here, he said, even Gabriel the angel did not bring a railing accusation against the devil. He didn't fuss at him or rebuke him or cast him out. He said, the Lord rebuked thee. So that's what I do. That's one of my favorite Jude verses. But I like over in Joshua, y'all hadn't got to it yet. Keep your eyes peeled for it. Joshua praying when they're fixing to go into battle. They're fixing to march into Canaan. And it says the commander of the host of heaven appeared to him, the chief, and it's obviously a theophany. And Joshua knows who it is. It's not just a regular angel or just a. And Joshua said, "Are you?" And he wanted to know what he was doing there. He said, "Are you for us or against us?" And the angel says, this is a paraphrase. He said, "I didn't come to take sides. I came to take control. I came to take over. I didn't come to take sides. I came to take over." I think Abraham Lincoln used that, quoted that. Of course, the best verse in Joshua was when they had kind of completed their mission. Joshua said, "Now you can do whatever you want to do." He said, he said, "You can serve the Egyptian gods if you want to." He said, "The Canaanite gods, there's plenty of them. You do whatever you do. You just decide, make up your mind, choose today whom you're going to serve." He says, "But for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord." And that's the last thing he did or said. He left. Great story in there too. But I said, before you get to Joshua, that remember when they were going to fight the Amalekites and it wasn't going too well, and God told Moses to go up on the top of the mountain, and Joshua and as long as Moses held up his arms with a staff, they would win, and they were winning the battle. But he got so tired that Joshua and Moses went up there and held his arms up. I couldn't have made it 50 years in ministry without there have been people who've held up my arms. They'd come along behind me and you're drooping a little bit, preacher. Let us give you a hand. So they've been worth gold and more. Yeah. Ronnie, I don't know if everybody else, but everybody's praying my pants don't fall down today. So.
I'm praying hard then.
Look how much caffeine he had this morning.
Yeah.
Tell him I said.
Probably too.
I got a few Mountain Dew.
Don't you tell him I said.
I think he kind of might have been like my daddy. My daddy called me one day and he was kind of slurring a little bit. And he said, "I think I got my AM medicine and my FM medicine messed up." And I said, "I think you did."
Preach today.
Okay.
So you gotta get that talk.
He's gotta get that in.
Yeah, he's
Get that talking.
it's gonna be gonna have communion today, so he's got preachers don't just drop those things. They fit them in somewhere else. I always hate to go to a funeral where they say, "We got retired pastor so and so coming." It's, oh Lord, he's got to catch up now. All them
Yeah,
years.
if they don't get out of the system today, next Sunday he's gonna preach a long time.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So you got your preview and your synopsis of Joshua. Let's go ahead and pick it up where the lesson is today. Title of the lesson is Amazing Grace, and you think about this and you're thinking, well, how did they get amazing grace? But we've heard this story before, but you really got to think about it. Rahab, all we ever hear is Rahab the harlot. In the New Testament we got Simon the leper. In the Old Testament we got Rahab the harlot. you know, how would you like to go? So I'm going down through history as Rahab the harlot in the most important book ever printed in the world. That's my title. But she served a very, very important place in this lesson and this thing that happened, this event that happened early in the taking of the promised land. As we'd studied last week, and he just reviewed a little bit, God had said, okay, y'all mourned Moses long enough. That's done. Now it's time to move on. It's time to, life goes on. And so this time, Joshua chose to go about it differently. You know, the first time when Moses brought him to the Jericho, and he sent 12, they gathered amongst the people and come up with 12 people, one from each tribe, and sent them as spies to come back and report to the people. Well, that didn't work too well. 10 of them come back scared to death, and 2 of them came back ready to go, and the 2 lost. Joshua was one of the 2 that lost. He was the one that wanted to take it 40 years ago, him and Caleb. And when he was talking about favorite things in the book of Joshua, I don't know if we'll even cover this, but when they were conquering the different portions, Caleb was already 80 years old, and they was talking about this one particular place was going to really be hard to take because these people were really strong and their land was set up in a way that was going to be very difficult to attack them. And Caleb says, I want them. He said, hey, I'm 80 years old, but I want them because I know God's going to give them to me. You know, he was one of them kind of people. He said, I told y'all 40 years ago we should have been here already, but he said, since we didn't then, he said, I'm going to take them now. I wasn't scared of them then, I'm not scared of them now. But Joshua decided to send 2 spies that basically, I don't know if he even told anybody else. He just said, I'll go over there and be very quiet and just go into Jericho and kind of scout it out a little bit. I don't know, you know, these days, hardly anything happens in the world that we don't hear some version of it. We probably never hear the truth, but we hear some version of it. Back then, they didn't have television, they didn't have radio, they didn't have newspapers, they certainly didn't have the internet. But when these spies got to Jericho, they were recognized by someone who went to the king and said, hey, there's 2 Israelite spies here. And they went to Rahab's place. You know, a lot of people, it mentions in here, you know, it's kind of funny that they went to stay at the harlot's house. Well, the first thing popped into my mind, it may not, you know, y'all may not be able to see the comparison, but did you ever watch Gunsmoke? Well, you know, the saloon had rooms upstairs. Well, that was kind of like a little hotel. But they also had prostitutes. And, you know, Miss Kitty might have looked real pretty and everything, but she was running a house, you know, for the prostitutes. But people could also come there and stay. But it was the kind of place where it was not unusual to see strangers going in and out. So it didn't catch anybody's attention. But somebody recognized them as Israelites, and that's what caused the problem. But then it gets, you get into there and you start, you know, when the king sent people to get them, said, go to the harlot's house and bring these 2 spies to me. Well, you know, she just played it up big. She'd already hid them up on the roof. And when the king's people come in, she said, well, yeah, they came, but I didn't know who they were or where they come from. And just before dark, just before the gates closed, they left. But they went out that way. I don't know where they was going, but you can probably catch them if you hurry. You know, you can just see her, yeah, you but go on and catch them. And so these guys, they said, well, you know, sounded true. So they took off and they go out just going just as hard as they can. They're going to catch them before they get to the Jordan. Then evidently, the next part, it sounds kind of funny to me, because then she goes up she's told these people to go. You would think as soon as they were out of sight, she would tell these guys to get out there and get on. But she goes upstairs and she said, just before they went to sleep, so evidently they wasn't worried too much either. So we're going to sleep and let them go a little while. And so she went up there and she had hidden them. And she said, my people have heard about Israel and have heard of what your God has done. And she says, I know that your God is God, and he's the God of earth and he's the God of heaven. He's one of the commentaries gave a comparison in the Ten Commandments. When it's one of the first commandments that comes out, it says, make no other, your God is, I am God and I am a jealous God. And he says, make no image to represent me, not of heaven, not of earth, and not of the sea. And basically here she says, we know that your God is the God of heaven, he's God of earth, and he's God of all things. She was saying, I know we got lots of gods here in Jericho, and the reason that God was taking over this land and destroying all the people, the reason he was going to give the order to not leave anything living in Jericho, not animal, not man, woman, or child, was because they had strayed so far and rebelled so greatly against God and would not listen to the prophets. They would not listen to the preaching that had been done. People had been there to try to lead them back, and they were mistreated. So God was just saying, okay, this is your punishment, we're going to do it. But God had also told them, don't make any treaties with these people, kill them all. And later on, I don't know if we cover this or not, but the Gibeonites come in and they actually trick them. They make them think they've come from a way long ways away, but they want to have a treaty with them, and they find out they just lived over the hill there, So they did make that treaty, and it ended up backfiring on them later on, and they ended up later on having to do something different. But she came to him and she says, I know about your God. I know what he has done. I know what he's capable of doing. And she said, I realize he is the only God. And she was professing her faith. And our commentator in the book here says that although God said not to make any kind of treaties with these people, because of the way she was confessing her faith in the God of Israel, she was acting as if she was of Israel. So she had joined and become part of it. And you look at this little old story, and it says, well, she played a big part here. But what you don't realize is she was Boaz's mother. Boaz married Ruth. Ruth and Boaz were King David's grandparents. And they were both in the line of Jesus Christ. So here, Rahab, the harlot, as she's the only way she's ever mentioned in the Bible, is one of the ancestors of Jesus. Her lineage leads down to Jesus. There are only, I think, 3 women mentioned in the lineage of Jesus. And they are not Israelites. But she played a very important part, and that's you need to keep all of that in your mind. Think about all of that as you're looking at this and saying, this is how this started. This is where, if it had not been for this, when they came in and took Jericho and they saved Rahab and her family, one of these Israelites ended up taking her as a bride. And then their child was Boaz. And Boaz took Ruth, and Ruth and Boaz were parents to David's father, and then home to David. So you see this as just this little small story, but you see it fits into the big picture. It just falls right in place. If this had not taken place, then she would not have been in this spot here at the time. So God has the plan so intricately figured out and sees so far ahead of what we can even imagine. But she told him, she says, I believe in your God and I know that he is all powerful. And she says, I'm willing to help you even though it means completely turning my back on my whole people. She said, but I only ask one thing. She says, I want you to save me and my family. And these guys says, okay, you've been good to us. You've taken care of us. You've kept us from being killed. So we will make that promise to you and we will include your family, but you have to make sure they're all in one place. We're not going to go around trying to identify folks. Get them all in your house, and if they're all in your house, and you hang this red cord out the window so that we'll know that that's your house, and everybody, I can tell everybody, look for the house with the red cord, and those people were taken care of. So all the rules were set up, and everything was like, and they said, now, if anybody leaves your house, then their blood's on them. This also brought to mind to me when Abraham and Lot were out before they ever got this far many, many years ago. Lot was living in Sodom and Gomorrah, living in Sodom. And the angel came and said they was going to destroy the town for him to get out of town. Lot went and told all of his family what was fixing to happen, and nobody paid any attention. None of them believed him. None of them trusted him. None of them came to his house or came with him to leave. Just him and his wife and his two daughters. And his wife wasn't wholehearted about it. She turned around and looked back and turned into salt. But his family did not respond. But evidently when Rahab went to her family and said, hey, got to tell y'all something. So I had two spies from Israel that spent the night with me, and they said that they're fixing to level this place. But I made a deal with them. If y'all all come over to my house and commit to serve their God, then we can all live. And they said, let me give them a coat. Here, let's go. It didn't say any of her family refused to go. And by the fact that she went to tell them, she was taking the chance that they would tell the king, and the whole deal would be off. Because the spies told him, he says, if you tell on us, if you report us, tell what's going to happen, deal's off. So she took that chance. She felt sure enough in her belief and her faith. Evidently her family also believed as she did. It would be very odd for one person, and that one person to be the harlot. The family member that you would think would not be the one that led the group. This lesson kind of starts off by, saying that you've heard people say all the time, it says, well, nobody's perfect. But you think of families these days, we talk about the black sheep of the family, the one that's the rebellious one. Well, you would think Rahab would be right there, But she went to her family and she told them what was going on, and they said, okay, let's go. So obviously, God was moving in this. God was setting this up because he knew that Rahab was going to be in the lineage of the Messiah. It was part of his plan to put that in place. So it all worked out. Even though Lot was supposed to be a godly man, he had almost no influence toward his family and friends. But here she was, a pagan worshiper, a harlot, and she went to her family and said, the God of Israel, the God of all gods, the God of this world, the God of heavens, the God of earth, and all of below the earth, is going to come and take over. And if we don't commit to him, we're going to die. And she was able to convince her family. So to me, that's saying, It's kind of like other stories in the Old Testament when Balaam was going in. You know, he was supposed to go be answering a question for somebody. Somebody requested his presence, and the angel of the Lord appeared, and his donkey kept stopping. And eventually, after the third time, and he's beating on the donkey, and the donkey looked around at him and he said, "Why are you beating me?" It always was funny to me that why did that seem normal to him that his donkey turned around and started talking to him? That he would just say, "Well, because you're acting up," you know. But God shows us all through the Bible where He can use anybody to do anything. Abraham and Sarah, they were by far not perfect. Abraham, you know, every time he'd go into a new town, he'd get scared somebody was going to kill him to take his wife, and he told her 2 different times, "Tell them you're my sister." You know, when God told them they were going to have a child in their old age, they both laughed. They weren't perfect people, but God used them greatly. David, the man after God's own heart, that's Jesus' words himself. He was by far not perfect. He sinned. He had Jezebel's husband put in a place that he was certainly going to die because he wanted to have Jezebel as his own. He did things all the time that were not right. He had lived such a rough, bloody life that when he told God he wanted to build him a house, God said, "No, you ain't going to do it. You got too much blood on your hands." But he used David, and David will always be looked at as the greatest king of Israel. And you get to the New Testament, he picks Saul, a guy that has made his mission in life to kill as many Christians as he possibly could. And Jesus said, "But I want you to work on me, on my side." And he chose him, and he ended up being one of the greatest missionaries mentioned in the Bible. All through the Bible, we see God using the imperfect to bring about His will. God is in control of everything. When we hear the news and we start panicking a little bit, we just need to stop and think, God already knows what's going on. It was something on this morning. On Sunday mornings, I don't usually turn the TV on in the bedroom. I've gotten to where I'll do my reading and stuff in there because Liz is going to have the TV on in the den. So I'll read before I leave the bedroom. But on Sundays, about 7, I turn on the TV so that I can know when Sunday morning Good Morning America goes off. It's 8 o'clock, and that's what time I get up and get ready. And so it was on this morning, and I got up and got ready, went in and ate my breakfast and came back. And as I walked back through, it was playing, today, the other news program that comes on after Good Morning America, and I changed it over to Hallmark Channel or something. Liz said, "Oh, you're not concerned about the Iran deals?" And I said, "No, they're not going to tell us the truth anyhow. Why listen?" So I probably should keep up with things better, but I know that 90% of what you hear is not going to be the truth. So I just put my trust and my confidence in God that whatever happens, He's going to use it, and He's going to make it something great. When the scribes and the Pharisees started talking about getting rid of Jesus and plotting against Him and doing everything they could, and they got the Romans involved, and they took Him up there and they killed Him, and Satan was sitting there saying, "Yeah, that's what I want," and all of a sudden Jesus said, "It's finished." He said, "What do you mean?" You can just see Satan saying, what do you mean it's finished?" And then when he come out of the grave, I think Satan probably said, "I did just exactly what he wanted me to do." Because if Jesus hadn't died, we wouldn't have salvation. So they did just exactly what he wanted them to. Even though they thought they were plotting against him, they were doing exactly what God intended them to do. So we have to, even though it looks like a terrible thing that's happening in this world, it looks like a bad situation that we're in, it looks like things are getting hopeless. It's never hopeless as long as you got your hope in the right place. God will provide for us. He will take care of us. Rahab, she saw that. She had trust in that. She was in a situation, she knew, I'm going to state my case to these two guys. I'm going to take care of them. I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to try to win their trust. And then I'm going to lay my life and my family's life in their hands because she trusted in God. And I believe that she had given her life to God. I think that Rahab, at that point, she had already, and by the way, her family, it didn't mention any reluctance to her family of doing what she said. I believe they had too. I believe they're everywhere where there's problems, everywhere that you think everything is gone bad, even in Sodom, the worst places you've ever heard about in the Bible. Lot was there. Lot still worshiped God. He wasn't very good. He wasn't doing a really good job. He wasn't a very good Christian. But he was a Christian. He was a worshiper. So wherever you are, God has someone there. Elijah went out. He was running from Jezebel. And he prayed to God. He said, I'm out here in the wilderness. He said, they're killing everybody. They're after me and they're chasing me. They've killed all the prophets. And he's whining and crying. And God said, hush your mouth. He said, I still got 700 prophets right here in this area. Still on my side working for me. So whenever you think things are bad, whenever you think things are going really bad, God knows that there are other people there. God is on your side, and all who is on his side are on your side. So Jezebel, getting all my names mixed up, Rahab went to her family and said, this is the deal. They'll take care of us, and they'll protect us, and they'll make sure we're not killed if we do what they said, and we'll all get in one spot so they'll know where we are, and we hang this red cord out. Now we know once these guys, she lowered them down out the window. Her house was built into the wall, so she had a window that faced out there. So she lowered them down with a rope, and then she attached the red cord so that they could see it. But we know it was probably at least a couple weeks, because they marched around Jericho for 7 days. And there was probably a week or so before that, people going in and out of Jericho. Did nobody see that little red cord, or nobody think what it was? Or is that where the red light district got started? That's Jezebel. She got a red cord hanging out. That's what that means. You wonder, that cord was hanging there that whole time. And you would think, okay, we got this wall for security, and here she's got a rope hanging out the window. That may not be good. Now, the cord's not the same rope that she let them down with. It was a cord that they had given, probably something like a belt. But it was something they could see. And when the children of Israel was marching around Jericho for 7 days, every time they went around, they were able to look up and say, right there, that's where she lives. We need to keep that in mind. And as a result, her family was saved because she had faith in God. She trusted God, that even when it looked like there wasn't a chance, even though she knew that if these guys didn't trust her and they didn't back her, they didn't believe in her faith, that she was probably going to die, and all of her family. She put her faith in God, And she said, she took a chance and she said, I'm helping you, now help me. And they took a chance. They said, okay, we will. And they didn't know when they got back that Joshua was gonna back their game, but he did. And she was saved. And then she began, as we started this lesson off, she went on to be a very important part of history. She was unknown completely up until this point, other than Rahab the harlot. But Rahab the harlot was one of Jesus' descendants. And we need to always remember that no matter what has happened in someone's life, God can make a difference. God can use that life. God can use that person to achieve what he needs done. Some of the worst kings when Israel was through their history is they were enslaved by many, many different people. You know, at one point when you talk about Nehemiah, when you read the book of Nehemiah, they were one of the worst kings around that had ever been in history, was over them at that time, and Nehemiah served him as his cupbearer. And one day Nehemiah kind of looked downhearted and he asked him, he said, what's wrong? And it's kind of another thing that the preacher brought up in his message one time. He said, probably one of the shortest prayers. He said, Nehemiah just said, oh Lord, help me. And you wonder how many times have you prayed that when something was speaking, oh Lord, help me, look here. But when he told the king what the problem was, this guy that had been mistreating the Israelites, and they enslaved them and took them out of their land and destroyed their homeland, God changed his heart. Not only did he send Nehemiah back to rebuild Jerusalem, he gave him the money and wrote him letters of recommendation so that the people around him would give him the timber, the trees, the wood, the materials to build back the city of Jerusalem. So God can use anybody. So, you know, I try to do what I think is right in my life, and I leave God to take care of the rest of them. I can be an example, I can be a witness of God, but I cannot change anybody. God changes people. God uses people. God places things in our path that will lead us in the direction that we should go. He will always give us the strength to do what he's asked us to do. And we just need to keep that in our minds. Okay, we have communion today, so it's going to be maybe he got most of it out of his system and we'll get out of here early today. But yeah, you should hear what he says about you when you're not here. But let's keep our church in prayer. We've still got hurdles to clear. We've got things going on that are a little bit disturbing, some problems and some things that make us concerned and worried sometimes, but we just need to turn it all over to God and believe and realize that He knows what's going on. He already knows the answer. He already knows the solution. It's already in play. So all we got to do is trust Him, like Rahab did. Father, we thank you for today and for this opportunity to be here and be a part of this group and discuss your scriptures and talk about your promises. Bless us now, Lord, as we go from this place. Help us to trust you and to follow you and lean on your promises. Be with us as we go through this time of communion. Help us to remember, God, what you've done for us, how you've sacrificed for us, and what we owe you. Bless this church. Direct us, guide us, give us wisdom in knowing what we should do. It's in Christ's name. Amen.
Barbara, you told us not to tell him what you said. We won't have to. He'll hear it when it edits.
Yeah, it's on. Yeah, him and everybody else.